Welcome back. AC lesson number 13. A whole lesson on oils. You're going to be surprised to learn more about the oil. In the beginning, there was darkness. Oops, wrong beginning. In the beginning of automotive air conditioning systems, that would put us in the mid 50s, this is where average vehicles started to use air conditioning. All vehicles use the same kind of refrigeration oil. It was called refrigeration oil. There it is, refrigeration oil. Sometimes it was called mineral oil. Same thing, mineral oil, refrigeration oil. You see it? When should you use this kind of oil? When you're using R12. When should you use R12? Probably never. It's not very cost effective. They cost about $50 a can, and you have to have a license to get it. It's not practical to use R12. So, what are you supposed to do on some of the classics? You're going to get a lesson on how to convert a little bit later in the information on today's lesson. For the longest time, all motor companies use the same kind of refrigeration oil. Remember? Now, you should know that the refrigeration is very special, whether it's the past oil or the present oil or even the future oil. The refrigeration oil is very special. It's not just regular oil like engine oil, it is highly refined with emphasis on very low moisture content. Any refrigeration system cannot tolerate moisture. Between deteriorating the system and affecting the performance, refrigeration systems have to be moisture free. In fact, it is important that when you're working with the container of the oil, that the cap must be installed to prevent absorbing the oil into the moisture. Moisture will be absorbed into the oil when exposed with air. The technical term is called hygroscopic. I believe brake fluid is hygroscopic. It's not good to have oil that is contaminated with moisture. It's not good for the system, so we actually go out of our way to keep the moisture out. The first sentence, the moving parts of the compressor assembly must be lubricated for smooth operation and prevention of damage. It's obvious, it's just like an engine. But in the red, oil is also used at the seals and the gaskets as part of the sealing process. And the oil is actually also intentionally directed to the thermostatic expansion valve. There's an extra word for you, thermostatic expansion valve for correct operation. The oil must be compatible with the vehicle and the system being used. Now we're in the 90s. Okay, I know that's a little bit old, but I'm headed somewhere with this. There was one motor company, right, that was started to use a different kind of oil. Remember, this is the first time we changed refrigerants. It was in the early 90s. This when the R12 was on the way out and the present refrigerant was on the way in. What motor company, can you tell? The answer is there. Can you name that motor company? There it is. First on race day, Ford Motor Company started using a YN9A oil. Okay, along with that oil came what is known as the Ford Black Death. Google it. Google Ford Black Death, and you will find it. I didn't name it, but I just share the information. You can read and see how bad it was. I don't need to read it. I was there. I saw it. I smelled it. Hell, I tasted it. There. What am I talking about? This is an example of the Ford Black Death. That is oil and it's black and it's dead. That's why they call it that. The expansion tube is there. It was a mess. Black Death, well, what is it? It's the worst compressor disease to hit the industry. Here's what would happen. Let's just say this is about a 92 and the vehicle starts off new. After a few years, obviously the vehicle gets a little older. And since nobody ever cleans their condenser, wow, look at that mess. Since nobody ever cleans their condenser, the condensers are dirty. And now we're starting to overheat the refrigerator. We're starting to overheat the compressor. I'm headed somewhere. These guys don't last forever. All the pickups, they had fan clutches. And after a few years and a couple about 100,000 miles, these guys are going to slip. Some of the smaller vehicles on the Fords had the electric cooling fans, and it's very important that we keep the condenser as not hot as possible. You recognize the bridge? Ford Bridge is going to get replaced pretty soon. You're in stop and go driving. You're in South Texas. It's hot as heck. Poor cars. Anyway, here's what would happen. The Black Death. It came from overheating. What caused it? What caused Black Death? In the red. It's the Teflon rings and the pistons, and it's so wonderful. You know, if I say compressor piston rings, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the piston rings. Apparently, the Teflon, the material they were using, was not meant here for South Texas. They would get munched into a fine dust, and they would hit the hot oil because everything is so hot. The condenser is dirty, the clutch is slipping, extreme severe heat, stop and go driving. It's hot. The compressor would scream it could cough. The Black Death. Okay, now General Motors, they had their own problems. It wasn't as bad as the Black Death. I'm proud of that image. I took it. I must have seen 100 of these compressors where the Teflon ring. You see that Teflon ring on the top? It decides to leave its groove. And if you can see, there is a film of oil. This Teflon ring left its groove because it got too hot. Now, I'm not sure what it's like in Colorado. I've never fixed a car over there, but I know in extreme severe heat, these Mickey Mouse Teflon piston rings don't hold up very well in extreme condition, and stop and go driving and dirty condensers and slipping fan clutches and inoperative cooling fans. You're destroying the piston rings. There's the FX15. And the best liquid flush was not powerful enough. I'm going to mention flushing. Yes, we still have to flush. When an AC compressor fails internally, whether it's the Teflon rings or the head gasket or the valve themselves, there is contamination in the system that needs to be cleaned out. Now, things change. On the top, I got a 2020 Ford pickup. On the bottom, I got an early 90s Ford pickup. Things change. And the things I'm talking about are the design. On the left, that's a cutaway of a condenser. And that's what it used to look like. Look at the size of the passages back in the 90s and earlier. On the right, this is the design of a typical late model, means the latest thing out, new condenser. The passages are tiny, and you need to be asking yourself, well, why do they do that? They designed this condenser with multi-cross flow passages for extreme efficiency in the capacity. What the heck does that mean? In the early model on the left, we needed 4 cans of Freon to fill up that average pickup or average size car. On the right, a full size pickup. Sometimes 2 cans is too much or 2 cans is plenty. We are now with high efficiency condensers. But what happens is we cannot flush them anymore. We used to flush, where's my picture of the flush? We still flush some. We still have to flush some of the components, but one of the components that we don't flush anymore is the condenser because of the design of the condenser. They are justified in recommending or requiring that you replace the condenser if an AC compressor has had a catastrophic internal failure or even a mediocre failure. You just have to understand at the compressor, at the red, the first place, the guts of the compressor are headed are the condenser. The condenser is going to trap most of the deposits from the compressor. We used to flush compressors, but today you have to understand that we have to replace them. We're going to have to do something about this. So how did we fix Black Death? Well, the answer was to add some extra oil. That's what the experts say. Let's put some extra oil in it. It seemed to work. Add extra oil above system capacity. Well, how much? 1 or 2 extra ounces above system capacity. This was my first introduction to extra oil. I like oil. In fact, I am very generous with the oil. I don't know if you've picked up on it, but there's three major reasons I like extra oil. There they are, refrigeration oil. Now we might as well get all the other reasons that I like extra oil. I've done it by the book. I put in exactly what it called for. Yeah, I did everything correctly. I would flush, I would put a dryer, I would put the correct amount of either oil, I would do my nitrogen evacuation. All of this is coming at you in the lab. I would do this at home, trying to make a little extra money on the weekends, and I don't like it when something went wrong. In fact, I hated it when I had to do the job again for free. Well, why for free? Because I guarantee my work. I would do a compressor job, and within a month, that compressor's back. I absolutely hated it. After 1 or 2, what I call ridiculous numbers of system capacity. Let me show you in the red. This is an example of what I call a ridiculous number. Ridiculous. 8 ounces used to be the average for an average size vehicle. Dual units on vans and SUVs, well, that would take 12 ounces. The red arrow, I know that's a small car, but some of the new vehicles also have these ridiculous numbers. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is it so low? Well, they're just being cost effective. They're barely putting enough oil to get you by. Now, in the yellow, there, that's a more realistic number. Most of the vehicles used to take 6, 8 ounces. Some of the larger units would have to take some more. Some of the really small ones, maybe 6. But that red arrow pointing to 3 ounces, I think that's ridiculous. Screw the specs. I'm not working for free. I'm going to put some extra oil. It worked on Black Death. It's going to work on these ridiculous numbers. And it's pretty good on the regular amounts too. The last reason I like extra oil, because it's very helpful for the UV dye. In fact, the UV dye is blank, worthless. The UV dye doesn't work by itself. It has to have the oil. The UV dye needs the oil. Now, here's a quick lesson on converting. But first, let's get EPA out of the way. EPA wanted 3 things. Now, EPA is not interested in satisfying the customer. EPA is interested in saving the world. Not one speck of refrigerant should you vent. That means let it go into the atmosphere. I'm embarrassed to say I did it for decades, but that's all we knew. We didn't know any better. Okay? You're going to install these fittings. I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to show you the fittings. Now, these fittings used to come with a sticker and a label. I'm not sure they do anymore, but let's go on. This is the main secret to the success. Here you see the name Ester. Now, Ester, the real name is polyol ester. Polyol ester oil is a synthetic oil for refrigeration compressors, and it is compatible with a few different refrigerants. There it is, the nickname Ester. Ester is the secret to a successful conversion. It is the main thing that you have to do. If you're working, where's my picture? Yes, they're there. We're making a comeback. Vehicles are finally getting to be a little bit more classic. Darn it, where's my Mustang rules? Never mind, let's go on. When you're working on a late model vehicle, you're not going to use R12, you're going to use Ester. The real name is there. And Ester comes in one viscosity, 100. Ester refrigerant oil. That is the only conversion oil. If you're working on an early model classic vehicle, you're not going to put 12, you're going to put 134A, and the secret to your success is the Ester oil. This These are the retro fittings that EPA requires you to install. Now, the reason it'll come up is to tell everybody underneath the hood what kind of refrigerant you have. Well, you might be thinking, wasn't there only one? You're going to find out. You were supposed to recover every speck of refrigerant. You're supposed to install these retro fittings. The retro fittings would fit on top of the existing 12. On the left, those are the 12 fittings where we have the threaded ones. And you would put these adapters, retro fittings. It would do two things. It would allow you to use the 134 gauges, and it would tell the world, anybody else working underneath the hood, what kind of refrigerant you were using. Can you see them? Here's the retro fittings that would fit on top of them. Here's a couple of more. Now, there were two problems with the fittings. They would leak as far as refrigerant. They would leak. The Freon would leak. Or the opposite of that, they wouldn't let you get a reading. They wouldn't actually let you connect to the system. The fittings were a hassle, but they were required to be legal. And you know what we say about EPA. No, it's the other way around. EPA will screw you if they catch you breaking the law. Now, these are the highly recommended steps for the conversions. Highly, highly recommended. The oil that's in there is no good. In fact, it's in the way. So all the oil you get out is better. The oil that's in there is no good and it's in the way. So you're going to drain the compressor. You're going to flush the system in the lab. I will demonstrate how to flush the system. It is professional to replace the drying element. You're going to add the correct amount of ester and maybe one more. We're going to pressure test, evacuate, we're going to charge it, and you have to use less refrigerant. Do not add the full amount of refrigerant. It's not going to work. These are the steps to convert an early model classic R12 system into a working 134 system. Other information you should know about the conversion. It's not that cold. The new Freon, I remember customers, I want the new Freon. And I would tell them, no, you don't. It's not that cold. The 134, yes, it's more environmentally friendly, but it's not as cold. Some conversions would work pretty darn good, and some did not. The main problem was if the vehicle wasn't moving over 20 miles an hour, the AC was not too cold. And of course, maybe you can answer, there's no ram air. The air coming in through the grill and less cooling of the condenser, the pressures were too high. And we would have to compensate by putting in 20% less. The condensers were too small. Another big no-no, do not mix. Do not mix refrigerants. And you guys are lucky because you don't have to mess with this stuff. What is this? This is counterfeit refrigerant. None of the motor companies approved some of this. Here's another one. They got their catchy little name, Freeze 12, trying to act like they're R12, might cool it, might chill it. And guess what else you don't have to worry about? What? Propane. Yes, propane butane can be used as a refrigerant. It's nothing new, and it works great. Propane works great, except, here's the story. A woman living, and I don't make this up, copy and paste off the internet. A woman living in San Diego drove across the border to Tijuana to have her AC service. She was very pleased until the car exploded. If it leaks refrigerant and there's any kind of spark, yes, they're explosive. You know propane butane is explosive, but did you know it can be used? Look, folks, it's happening again. We're changing refrigerants. The phase of the 134 has started. You need a license to buy a 30-pound cylinder. Here in a couple of years, you're going to need a license, and I'm going to have you set up. Let's go on. The next oil, the one we use today, the PAG. PAG, I suppose, is an acronym. Polyalkylene glycol is used on factory 134 systems. Well, how many kinds of PAG are they? Well, I'm not sure. Let's start off with the basic four. PAG 46 in the late model vehicles is probably the most common. But yes, they have PAG 100. For a little while, General Motors was using PAG 125. They still have, and you can buy the PAG 100. And yes, you have to buy the right PAG. You have to install the right PAG. It's kind of like our steering fluid or transmission fluid. You have no business putting the wrong fluid into the vehicle. It needs to have the right oil. Now, here are some factory ones, and there's the pointer. There's the factory number for the PAG, right? You see the first pointer on the left, F7A-XYZ, and then the one over here on the other one. The only reason I mention this is because the stickers under the hood are going to speak Greek. Right there in the middle, WSH-M1C23. That's the factory number. And that's what you're going to find under the hood. That number is not very helpful in this particular case. They want DH with motor companies. This looks like Nissan. Nissan wants that number. Okay, but these are the generic numbers. These are the three main PAGs that we use today. For example, what motor company do we have here? I'm not sure, it almost doesn't matter. It's using the ND8 oil. Let's finish this lesson on oil. The oil is a huge dilemma. What do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. You can connect gauges or a station to the vehicle. The blue gauge reads 0 psi. Well, how much freon's in the system? Well, that's easy. Freon. How much oil's in the system? The correct answer is we don't know. We don't know. We don't know how much is in there. Just because the system is empty of refrigerant does not mean that the system is empty of oil. You have to do three things to say it's empty. And all those three things are a hassle. You have to do three things for you to say it has zero amount of oil. The first thing you have to do is to remove and drain the compressor. You're not going to want to do that sometimes. That's a lot of problem. You're going to have to flush the entire system. The entire system has a coating of oil that needs to get out of there. The oil doesn't always come out during the recovery, just a little bit. You're going to have to replace the drying element. These are the three things that you have to do in order to say, okay, the system is empty. Most of the time, you're not going to do these three things unless you're actually doing a compressor job. Hey, you're always going to add some oil. Always. You're doing an injustice if you don't add oil. If you're replacing a leaky hose, if you're replacing a leaky condenser, if you're replacing an evaporator or any component of the air conditioning system, you're going to have to add oil. So how much should you add? I literally take 6 things into consideration. First of all, what does it call for? Each vehicle is different. Second thing, well, how much came out? Yes, you will see in the lab during recovery, there's an oil separator that shows you how much came out, but that is not empty in the system. I have to consider the age of the vehicle, the mileage of the vehicle. Has anybody else worked on it? Did they add oil? Too many questions. So here it is. Remember, I like extra oil. You almost have to double the dose to get into trouble. And yes, you can put too much, and the pressures will be too high, and it's not good for the compressor. So how much do you add? Average size vehicles, half of system capacity plus 1 or 2. On a larger vehicle, a full-size pickup, MAS, SUVs, a full-size vehicle, you're still going to add half of system capacity, but you're going to be a little more generous with the oil. There. Yes, hybrids, they take a special oil. And yes, I experienced adding oil to one of these, and I had to go out of my way to get the right oil. Ah, I'm done. It looks like we're at the end.